Hello, parents, and Happy New Year. Today's guest on Picking Teams is Kevin Yee, the owner of Padel Atlanta. And the plays we're sharing today will help you avoid becoming that overbearing, crazy parent we so often hear about. Kevin Yee, it's so good to see you. We used to spend every day together, every afternoon, and now I only get to see you, I don't know, every month or so. It just feels like way too long. But how have you been? How's everything going?
Everything's going well since stepping down from Emory. I'm now in the paddle world and trying to create a paddle business here in Atlanta and Louisville and getting that up and running from kind of ground zero to one to 100 to 1,000. It's every step is not easy. And someone just texted me the other day, wishing us like a 1 year anniversary for our paddle business. And I text back, it's like, oh, I didn't even remember that. So, you know
Oh, that's so
put the head
sweet.
down. Yeah, you're kind of in the trenches and you just keep going. So it's been fun. It's been a new adventure, and definitely miss the team and miss Emery since I've been there for quite some time. And it's different, adjusting to a different life, and definitely miss it. But excited for the path ahead as well.
Yeah, well, it's always exciting to chart a path forward and try something new. As you know, that's what I did a couple years ago as well. So I'm totally supportive of following your dreams. But for those listeners who don't know, what is Padel and what have you created? You created a monster, but like, what is it?
So it started in Mexico in 1969, and it's a cross between tennis, squash, racquetball, and actually a little derived from a sport called platform tennis, which is pretty popular in the Northeast, Midwest, and some of the colder states of the US. It's played in a glass court, so the walls are all glass. The ball looks very similar to tennis ball, and the scoring is the exact same as tennis as well. So playing 2 out of 3 sets, a deuce, tiebreaker at 6 all of that. So someone that comes from tennis can pick it up quite easily. And the whole goal is the same thing as tennis is, you're hitting the ball across the net. So that's very familiar. Ball has to hit the ground before it hits the wall, otherwise it's out. So a lot of that is very similar. Strokes are quite similar as well. There's a lot of volleys, there's a lot of lobs. So anyone from tennis or racket sports background tend to pick it up pretty quickly. But it's a sport that's kind of taken over the world, and right now taking over the U.S. As popular as pickleball is growing in the U.S. That's pretty much the same growth as it is in the entire world right now. And the U.S. is kind of the last to get the sport, but it's growing pretty rapidly. I think every year the number of facilities and courts double and triple.
That's amazing. And you have two facilities, am I right?
Correct. Yes. So we started our first location here in Atlanta, over in the Chamblee area. Our second location, which we started and opened up back in May, that's in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're currently opening up a third location in West Midtown of Atlanta.
Oh, no way. That's amazing.
Yep. So that's going to be our hopefully newest ones. We're still trying to have to cross some hurdles and jump through some hoops, but we're hoping to open up by Q3 of next year and looking into several more locations to open up by the end of next year or into the following year as well.
That's amazing. So you're truly bringing Padel to the people. I love it. So for anyone listening, if you aren't familiar with Padel, you can look up Kevin's company. It is, what's the website, Kevin? Make
Hey,
sure I get it right.
play patl.com. And
Playpatl.com. Awesome. That's amazing. So that was a little advertisement for you. Kevin and I were just talking about how this is a new podcast. I don't have any advertising sponsors yet. I think in order to qualify, you have to have 1,000 downloads in 1 month. We're getting close. We're getting there. But that was our little advertising. That's how we do it here. We just kind of piece things together, and it's amateur hour here at the Playbook for Parents.
so
But anyways, our podcast is about coaching. And Kevin, you have been a coach for most of your life now, really. You have coached youth, you have coached college, and now you're coaching adults with Padel, imagine, or coaching all ages, of course. So tell us a little bit about all of your coaching experiences.
Yeah, so in college, every summer, I think some college kids go back and they coach at their academies or locally during the summertime. So that's kind of what I did with the younger kids coming up. And I graduated. I started at A Academy here in Atlanta, which is where I grew up playing tennis. And I actually had to make that decision. I think between that and coaching for you, Amy. And I know.
Yeah, I didn't like the decision you made at one point, but you came back to me.
Think I was there for about between college and after college, I think about 10 years or so. So coaching junior tennis there, head of development for the junior program. We would coach some adults as well. So anywhere from the little 4-year-old tiny tots all the way to 70, 80-year-old adults. So everything in between. So that's kind of where I got my coaching career started. And then Amy, I think we talked back in 2000, was it 17, I believe.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yep.
and so Amy brought me back on as a part-time volunteer coach for several years, and that's how the college career coaching started. And then coached 5 years part-time, and then 2 years, last 2 years full-time at Emory, and then transitioned now. We actually just got our coach approved for his visa, so he's coming over in February. So since then, I've been de facto paddle coach
Wow.
and coach
Wow.
new sport. I'm still learning all the ins and outs of it, but with all the coaching background, it's been an easy transition into that. Just new subject is all.
Sure. So, what do you see as the main difference between coaching youth, starting at the tiny tots, to coaching college? And then I want to hear your thoughts on college and adult as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the kids, I think the general overall consensus on just coaching in general is making sure whoever you are coaching to have a good experience. I think that's the most important thing. Otherwise, what's the point of playing that sport or doing activity? So I think the roots and the foundation of it is making sure that they're having fun, they're getting a good experience out of that. With the tiny tots, again, it's about having fun, getting their interest involved in the sport. Coming home wanting to play it again. That is up to the coach to make sure they have that experience and have that good time when they're out there. As they start to develop more focused on it and spending more time developing a little bit more on the technique side, footwork, and going in on those two aspects side by side to develop their game. And as they kind of reach into kind of that middle school era. I think they're usually more singular focused on a specific sport, and in that time, guiding them through tournaments, guiding them through coaching on court, off court, and working on their game a little bit more specifically, but also coaching them a little bit through middle school social era as well as
Mhm.
now. I think there's a lot going on for them as school picks up, social life picks up, and having to navigate all that all at once could be somewhat tough. And then they get into the high school era, looking at colleges as you know, that's your expertise nowadays. It's a lot about guiding through a little bit more kind of that independence and adulthood and having a little bit of a balance in their life. Not everyone's watching you anymore to find out how to manage their time, their social life, manage their school life. It's a lot going on all at once, and I feel that the coach helps them through that as well. So just throughout different stages of their lives, I think that coincides with their tennis game too.
Absolutely. And how did the parents kind of fall into this coaching and development piece from the young ages all the way through to college?
Yeah, what I see the kind of the biggest difference in the youth and the college, I guess, parenting, besides, of course, their age, I feel that when they get to college, the parents tend to be a little bit more hands off. When they're growing up playing tennis, they tend to be a little bit more hands on. And I think with the separation of possibly distance, I think that could help that, as well as a lot of that responsibility is taken off, at least from the tennis side, off of the parents onto the coaches more so, not taking kids to tournaments, not having to drive to practice, all of that. So I find that when they come and watch and support more, not that they're less supportive as a kid, but I feel that, they can be there just to cheer, kind of at the sidelines, and really enjoy watching a kid play. When I was coaching junior tennis, I mean, as you know, there's, I think there's a little stigma around, having a crazy tennis parent and all that, which I feel that sometimes it can be difficult to separate that responsibility of the parent, as they are very involved a lot of their time, is they want their kids successful and want them to succeed. So I think there's a little bit of extra pressure on both of them to, have a little success in the junior days, because there is a time commitment process. And I think that's when you start to get the crazy, quote unquote, crazy parent, where they start to become a little overbearing or put a little pressure on their kid. And I think it's tough at times to have that border kind of be crossed a little bit. It can be tough in those regards.
So part of the reason that I started this podcast was because I saw lots of those crazy parents that you mentioned, because we see them a lot in tennis. And I really wanted to create something that could help parents to make a choice to become the supportive parent that I know we all, as a parent myself, we all want to be. And sometimes we cross that line, like you're talking about, and we chastise ourselves later. But in the moment, we just get all caught up and we become that crazy parent. It happens, in a snap of the fingers. Like, we don't even expect it to happen, and we try. But I think that if we are really aware of what it looks like to cross over into the dark side, then we can take the steps to prevent it. So, with that in mind, tell me about the craziest parent you've ever seen. No names here,
James,
but
oh, it's. I think in those regards, I wouldn't say from college, but more in I guess the junior days. I remember
yeah,
one one parent. It wasn't a player of mine, but it was an opposite player. The little girl was playing a 10 and under tournament on the short court with orange dots, and barely anyone knew what was going on. And both parents were there. So the opponent's parent, the kid I was coaching, her dad was there as well. And as 10 and unders, they're still trying to figure out what's in and out as well. So
exactly.
there's going to be a lot of balls that may be in that are called out, and vice versa, and that can sometimes drive parents a little bit mad and crazy. And so as that was happening, and again, part of the coach's job is also coaching the parents as well, and that's something I focused on a lot as a junior coach too. She would always turn to me like, should we intervene? Like, should we call that ball out? Should we get the ref for them? I'm like, no, it's okay. It's not on purpose. They're still figuring out if they need to call line judge. They will. We talked about this with the kid as well. And I remember the opponent's kid went to the bathroom. It's hot, it's dead of summer, maybe 95 degrees out there. And so my kid's dad, shouted out to her, as like, hey, make sure you drink some water, get under the shade as you wait. And the other parent freaked out. They freaked out. It's like, you can't be coaching her. This is a violation, and yada yada. And it escalated so badly that it almost got into a fist fight.
A fist fight over 10 and under tennis.
Correct. The closest I've ever seen someone get into a fight over a tennis match, and 10 and unders as well. So
And this was a parent telling his kid to drink water, or telling the other kid to drink water.
telling his kid to drink water, because
I mean, either way, it's like, that's a kind gesture, but
just want to make sure the kid's not going to pass out. So
right.
I think some of these parents get kind of caught up in the game and the rules sometimes, and sometimes it could be flashed out in other ways as well. So
Well, I mean, let's think about it. Like, if I were to tell you to go drink water on a bathroom break, what could that be code for?
tell me.
I mean, parents lose their minds. It's unbelievable. And in 10 and under tennis, that's absurd. Okay, so that's a great story. I think that's helpful for the parents listening to just maybe take some deep breaths if they feel like there's some coaching going on, or you don't want your opponent to remind their child to drink water. Take some deep breaths. If you feel yourself elevating, you know what I love? And I started doing this when I was coaching, Kevin. You might remember I would wear my Apple Watch,
Yeah.
and you know how it tracks your pulse. So if my pulse rate went up, then I knew I was getting to that state of like, okay, I might snap on my college players. And so I would take some deep breaths there to make sure that I didn't lose it. So that could be a tip for parents as well. Maybe set up your iPhone to ding when your heart rate escalates. But okay, so that was a good what not to do example. Give us an example of a time when you saw parents really doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that happens more oftentimes than not too.
Good,
So
good. That's what we want to hear.
preface those stories with, a lot of parents, being able to. I don't think there's like one big specific thing, um, but a lot of them, just being very supportive and being there and just making sure that, win or lose, there's encouragement, but also a little constructive, not criticism, but constructive help moving forward and what to improve as well. I think that's kind of the biggest key besides just encouraging, right? Because you want to see a path forward for the kid as well. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. I think leading into that topic, that conversation, and in terms of how parents can be supportive, is I see a lot of times the parents like to try to coach the kid in different ways. And, sometimes that can be confusing for the kid too, especially when there's thoughts and ideas coming from different mouths. It's kind of like the analogy of having too many cooks in the kitchen. That path forward becomes a little bit confusing. It can be a little bit misguided as well in terms of which path to go. And so then when that happens, it's, you're working on 10 different things at once, and it's really hard to accomplish anything at that point because it becomes so overwhelming for the kid. So I would say kind of like the best advice is if they want to help in those regards, it's really important to be on one page with the coach, but also, just kind of creating that support environment to making sure, again, the kid has a good experience. Back to that quote unquote crazy parent when they're putting a lot of pressure, a lot of ways to have to perform. And I think that ultimately creates a little bit of fear and it doesn't let the kid at their best either. So, at the end of the day, it's just making sure you're there for them. I think it's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's so key. And, I typically recommend that parents don't try to coach their kids, especially parents that know the sport, because then the young athlete tends to try to impress or make their parent happy. And there gets to be this whole, like you said, confusion surrounding love and success, and how do they achieve their parents' love by achieving success versus just being a kid and getting the love because they're a kid. So yeah, I tend to recommend to my families that they step away from coaching and leave the coaching to the experts like you, for sure. I think that's in the best interest of these student athletes. And then the other thing too, I mean, you touched upon this, but burnout is a real thing. And when we're coaching these kids at such a young age, by the time they get to be in high school or college, sometimes they're just over it. Whether they start their sport too early, whether they specialize in the sport too early, whether they are ready to be involved in other things that they had to sacrifice for years because they were putting all of their energy into their sport. I mean, whatever it is, there is such a risk of your child just giving up their sport prematurely if we coach them and if we place too much pressure on them. So I think that's really important for families to remember. Kevin, thanks for being here today. I've saved the rest of our conversation to air in a later episode, so listeners, keep an eye out for another Kevin Yee episode to drop later on this year. And in the meanwhile, check out Kevin's Padel company at playpaddle.com. That's PLAYPATL.com.